guys, how are you going? I note your views in regards to human rights in regards to housing and the right to own housing. How do you reconcile the human right to have access to housing with superannuation, which is effectively mandating taking someone's wage away from them, which inhibits their ability to own housing?
I guess that is a complex policy and ideological question, and I'm not sure that I personally could, weigh in on that in relation to how a court might determine the right to housing. I can talk about the right to social security, which would have implications for superannuation and for other mechanisms that exist that protect people's, that provide income support for people. So certainly superannuation and all, the state pensions and the policies that provide income support would need to ensure that people who are, rendered ill or disabled or unable to support themselves at various points in their lives should be able to rely on the federal government to provide support for them as citizens of Australia. So certainly the right to social security would be key in ensuring that people are entitled to live out dignified lives without loss of income. How that interacts at a policy level with the right to housing is, I guess, something that the government would have to determine in its weighing up of the different rights that Australians are entitled to, both housing rights
and thank you. That's an excellent point about the right to social security, and I'll mention the pension here because the cost of superannuation is about $50 billion in tax concessions, which goes to the mainly upper 25% of income earners, the people who wouldn't get the pension anyway. The Productivity Commission has estimated the cost of managing superannuation at another $30 billion. Now, the overall cost of the pension at the last budget, I think, was about $54 billion, and that is spent on 50% of retirees. That's exactly the same number of retirees in a relative sense, relative percentage term, as the number of retirees on a full-time pension back in 1992. Now, if you've got 14 million workers in this country, and I think about 2 or 3 million people on the pension, do you think it would be better to increase the pension and have a higher safety net rather than give generous tax concessions to those wealthier people who don't need the pension anyway?
Okay, what I'd like to say in response to that, because you're raising very complex policy decisions and considerations, is that human rights legislation wouldn't remove the role of government in balancing these very complex and important policy considerations in determining what government policy should be. Where human rights becomes important is ensuring that people have basic access to rights to health, to housing, to social security, to fundamental requirements for a life lived with dignity and equality. And so how the government chooses to ensure that is left to government, and it's very important.
Okay, so let's just jump back then to the human right for a worker to keep their wages. So when superannuation was introduced in 1992, there was no referendum where Paul Keating went to the public and said, by 2025 we're going to take 12% of your wages and give it to someone you've never met, and there's no guarantee you're going to get it back when you're 67. Now, given that while it's 12% of a total wage, for many people it's actually 100%, if not more, of their disposable income, and in many cases it's actually pushing people below the poverty line because they have to hand their money over to someone they have no control over. And what's worse is the money that is in superannuation, members of superannuation funds don't actually get to elect their board members. So it's not even a democratic process where the people who do manage their money are held accountable to the members. So, there's a couple of issues here. There's a violation of human right for a worker to keep their wages, and then there's another violation of human rights for the worker to actually decide who is going to manage their wages for the next 40 years, because they have no say in that.
Certainly, in terms of the international human rights framework, social insurance, which I suppose superannuation is a form of social insurance, and we see it all over the world. That can certainly comply with human rights. It obviously depends on the design of the particular policy, and that's, governments have the right to do that and to be, if the public don't like particular social security policies, they can be elected out. But where the right to social security becomes important is where the example you gave of somebody being below the poverty line. In that situation, in a wealthy country like Australia, if the income support system was not meeting the needs of people to live adequate lives, as members of the society, then the right to social security may well be in violation, and government would need to reconsider its policies to ensure that people were able to, in fact, live above the poverty line.
Okay, thanks.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.